Okay, how should you analyze fiction? Setting, character, action, style, ideas. Hello. A lot of people think of English as a very nuanced subject, mainly because they think it's very subjective and that there's no real methodology in terms of like how students can improve their analytical skills and their writing skills. So today I'm going to show you otherwise. How should students try to analyze a piece of fiction? So let's just talk about what fiction is. I'm just going to make it very simple. I classify fiction as basically poetry or prose, and then prose would be just like either a short story or a novel. Actually, we would also categorize plays as part of this, as many of you would be studying like Shakespeare. I'm going to offer you a very commonly used methodology. This is not the one and only methodology. You can create your own when looking at something. Let's get to the point. Now, this methodology is called SCACI. Now, the first thing we really want to look at, like a poem or a play or a book, what is the setting? In its most basic form is the time and place. The physical setting tells us things about the character. For example, if we're in a classroom, there's probably a student and a teacher. So these are things that we can infer. Now, there's also the deeper settings. One thing that we look at is the social setting, settings that we cannot see. You know, how are the characters or how the people in the book stacked up, right? Does someone has more power over another character? So this is all part of the social setting, and it's the fabric of the society. When you look at Romeo and Juliet, there's going to be a king, right? The king is on top, and then there's like noble families and then peasants, right? So that's basically the social setting. Now, there's also other deeper settings such as economical setting. If you look at, for example, a book from like Charles Dickens, he is a person that always writes about poor people and how poor kids like interact with adults because he wants the audience to feel for marginalized people back then. So one of his main messages in a lot of his books is really that we should care for the weak in the society. There's other settings such as like political setting. For example, George Orwell's novels are all about politics, Animal Farm. It's all like reflecting political injustice in society. It's basically a reflection of like socialism or communism. And then we get to like moral setting, which is something that we see in a lot of like different works, right? For example, in Handmaid's Tale, it's basically a dystopian society where women are put to slavery. It's really screwed up. It's like upside down. It's really important to understand what the social setting or what the setting in general is in order for us to understand what the characters are like. Which brings me to the second point, the character. So just like how we looked at setting where we analyze like the physical setting and the deeper things, we also want to look at the things on the surface for the characters, such as their appearance. Are they good looking? Are they ugly? Male, female? What are they wearing? That kind of tells us something about them. These are things that authors use to create meaning in a character. Second thing we want to go deeper is what's the personality of the character, and we can see this from like the character's actions, what he or she says, so that's pretty clear cut. Once we get into the deeper level, what is the relationship between like multiple characters? Oftentimes in books, it's not as obvious as it seems. Trying to decipher these characters is nuanced kind of relationship is really difficult. Moving on, action, basically, like how is tension built? Imagine you have a rubber band. When you pull it apart, it's going to become really strong and then it's going to snap. That's how good stories are being built. There's always going to be tension, going to be exciting points. Let's say Macbeth, right? The main character, when he is talking himself through and his wife is kind of making him power hungry, that's where the tension is built, and then he's like visualizing this dagger in his mind, like, and then snap, he goes kill the king. But sometimes like good plays or good novels have this tension or this built up multiple times in the book, right? So after he goes kill the king, he becomes crazy, just strung up by guilt, that he goes mad as well. So it's really important for us to identify key scenes or key sentences where tension is built in a book. Next up, we're getting into the nitty-gritty details, but it's basically the writer's choice. Why did the writer choose to use a certain word, a certain metaphor, a certain imagery? Or why did the writer use like the second person point of view? Why are the certain sentences so long? And so we have to decipher why the writer used these things. These are all quirky little things that the writer chooses to do. So for example, Ernest Hemingway, my favorite author, basically writes all this stuff very straightforward. That's his style. He wants to write like almost like a reporter, which comes to the main thing. Like, why do we read anything is we want to understand what is the main idea. What is the writer trying to achieve? So we mentioned like setting, political stuff, economical stuff. These are certain hints in terms of the message that the writer want to bring across, which you don't have to agree with or disagree with. That's just what the writer wants to do. So it's really important to understand the main theme. You want to pick the author's mind in terms of why they see things a certain way. So hopefully the above system helps us get a really quick, easy way of understanding a work in the most simplest terms. I'm going to come back with some more tips on other interesting English topics. So hope to see you soon. Thanks.